So this was originally going to be a much different video. I was initially going to do a few videos covering Zombleader Studios' creepypasta movies at the patron request of Jacob from Bad Creepypasta, but that kind of fell under when they purged their channel, fearing actions from YouTube after Copa went through. Thankfully, he came through with another suggestion. Borderlands is a 2009 first-person shooter role-playing game made by the imbeciles responsible for Alien's Colonial Marines. Okay, turns out I had the wrong thing entirely. Let's try this again. The Borderlands, also known as Final Prayer in the US, is a 2013 British found-footage horror movie. The plot follows 3 Vatican investigators determining the legitimacy of a miracle at a local small-town church. And that's about as far as I'll go for story at the moment. I don't usually give spoiler warnings on this channel, because I wouldn't wish what I normally cover on anyone, with the exception of Candle Cove, Nana's content, and the Slenderman series I covered for Slender Month. But spoiler warnings are in full effect for this video, because this is a great movie, and I'll talk about why before getting into the story. You can keep watching for now. Without talking about spoilers, and while on the subject of the story, it's really good. The premise is already very interesting. A Vatican investigation story is one I haven't seen before, and it immediately sets up some mystery which keeps you invested early on. The twists and turns the story takes along the way right up until the last few minutes keep you guessing as to what's really going on here until the big reveal at the end. It surprised me for sure, but it not only made sense, it gave further context to previous events in the story, which made the whole thing even better. A massive highlight is definitely the characters. I think I've been subjected to so much trash recently that I kind of just forgot what good characters were like, and these guys brought me back to reality. Their interactions make up a good portion of the first part of the movie, and it helps add a slow burn approach to the pacing. We end up really liking these guys before bad things start happening. And happen they do bad. The 3 main characters are Gray, Deacon, and Mark, though we also meet Father Krellick, who is the head of the church they're investigating, and Father Calvino from the Vatican. Gray is a sort of everyman who mostly does technical work, setting up cameras and audio equipment. He isn't very religious, unlike the others, but he's the most easygoing and is definitely the heart of the team. Deacon, on the other hand, is much more jaded and cynical. He's done a lot of investigations in his time and has seen some messed up shit, but he gets along well with Gray, and their chemistry is one of the strong points of the movie. Soon after, Mark tags along, and he seems even more bitter, skeptical, and jaded than Deacon is, who really starts warming up to the idea that something legitimate is going on as the movie progresses. What's very nice is that, despite the bizarre situation everyone finds themselves in, the acting and character interactions are all very natural, and you get the sense that these are real people. I can buy Deacon punching this kid in the fucking face. And since this is a horror movie, another thing it does well is scare the hell out of you. If you suffer from claustrophobia or know the story of John Jones in the Nutty Putty Cave, this may not be the movie for you. The found footage element really helps to scare you in these tight space scenes, especially with how dark it is, and the slow burn pace builds tension easily, since you figure, oh god, something terrible's gonna happen in there. Don't go in there, Deacon! Speaking of found footage, I can actually talk about camera work in this movie, unlike Slender or Always Watching. Because there's so many cameras in so many places, we're actually able to get some variety in our shots, which makes the movie much more interesting to watch than your standard found footage affair. Slender kinda does this towards its ending too, but this movie does it better. When the movie needs to be claustrophobic, up close and personal, it is, but it also pulls back when it needs to. There's also plenty of instances where the shot, despite being handheld, looks pretty good. Every aspect of the movie just shines, especially in comparison to its contemporaries. Overall, this is a fantastic movie and one of my new favorite horror movies, not just found footage. So if you want to hear about the story in detail now, and especially the ending, then I highly recommend you watch the movie before continuing on with this video. Go ahead and do that now. If you're watching this far, then you're probably horrified by what you've just seen, or else you don't care about this movie and just inexplicably like the sound of my voice. Or maybe you just wanted to watch the ad break, I don't know. Our story begins with a short clip of a previous investigation in Brazil. There are some fake speakers which play ominous religious chanting, cluing you in as to what's gone on here. The cameras are shoved away and we cut to the main story with our boy Gray setting up the tech equipment for the investigation. Deacon shows up and the two get acquainted as Gray explains that all the cameras are new regulation after what happened in Brazil, since there were gaps in the timeline, which is important since apparently people just vanished on that assignment. So we have an actual legitimate reason to have our characters filming in high quality constantly that later ties into the story and characters. Unbelievable! They get to know each other and share some quality time together before heading off to the church the next day to meet Father Krellick and set up the cameras. They're also shown the video of what transpired on the day of the supposed miracle.
What's that? Father.
The setup here is pretty good. It makes sense that a family would be recording a baptism since that's a big deal for a lot of families. The gang wraps up for the day and heads to a bar to have a drink and a chat. Deacon doesn't believe anything for a second, having seen plenty of cases where even more believable occurrences were faked for worse reasons.
But that girl in Spain last year with the stigmata, you can't fake that.
No, I was there for that.
Dude, you can't fake stigmata. They're holes in your hands. I mean, what was it? Hidden blood capsules or something?
No, it was much simpler. Every day for 10 weeks, the girl's mother cut her hands and feet open. The girl got septicemia. Do you know what her mother said to me after she died? Now you can make my girl a saint.
Mark shows up that night, less than pleased about the two starting the investigation without him. They all get some food, but outside they hear screaming and see something on fire. Apparently some kids set a live sheep on fire to scare the hell out of the guys before running off, and it leaves the gang shaken up. They're clearly not welcome in this town, and according to the journal of the last minister of the church, it's been that way for a while.
A curious town, none too pleasant for it. The locals are a sullen bunch, and the skies are leaden grey. Well, I know how he feels.
That night, we see Father Krellick desperately praying in the church, amid ominous noises, including the sound of crying babies. The next day, the group heads to the church to find out how the miracle was faked. After going over the footage, they notice the water on the table vibrating, so they figure a speaker was used to vibrate the table and check around to see if anything was hidden in the walls. Gray gives Deacon a scare, and Deacon's reaction is appropriate. All the while, Mark hears a scratching noise that he can't identify and checks around. Gray heads outside for a smoke and sees a very ominous tombstone before a dog startles him. Getting some bad flashbacks here, movie. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's okay. It's okay. Shh, 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 shh. Thankfully, these are the only scares like this in the movie. Everything from here on is legit. As Mark investigates the noise, he finds a small blocked-off hole making even more ominous noises before something happens to him and he has to be escorted out of the church, blood gushing from his ears. He's taken to bed, and after some pushing, Deacon tells Gray what happened in Brazil. After being assigned to investigate a congregation that claimed to be able to heal the sick, the team apparently saw God himself before vanishing completely and turning up dead in the jungle days later. An entire Vatican team straight up dying is a really good excuse to make sure everything is filmed from now on. Hell, that could make its own movie. We once again see Father Krellick, but this time the events taking place are much more overt and conspicuous. Now it seems like this miracle really was legitimate. The next morning, Deacon has finished reading the old minister's journal.
More cages, sick to my core. The dreams drew me here, perhaps always him. I beseech you, reader, leave this place, this village, a painted facade. He lies beneath, ever hungrier for souls. Now I see the perfect, hideous logic of the orphanage. I may have a new master now.
This is important for later. Back off to church, we find Father Krellick still inside and looking fairly traumatized by what happened. Gray sets up some microphones to try and capture whatever was making the scraping sounds and moving around. They hear not only the sounds, but also the crying of babies, just like Krellick heard. Mark thinks it's interference from a baby monitor, and when the crucifix moves again with Krellick outside the window, Mark pursues him to the roof. Back downstairs, Gray and Deacon hear the crying again, but this time the radio is off. It's not a baby monitor. Krellick knows that they don't believe it's a miracle, and if what's happening to his church isn't of God's will, well, he doesn't want to find out and jumps to his death. He gets better though. But then he dies. Yeah, definitely another night at the pub after that. Before that though, they run into the kids who lit the sheep on fire earlier, and Deacon clocks one in the fucking face. What a baller. While this conversation they're having at the bar here seems like just character building, it's probably the most important discussion in the entire movie.
Well, the people that came before you lot, right, pagans, they believed in stuff that was real. You know, they had the moon, the sea, the stars, the sun. They'd stuff. They worshipped stuff.
They were just worshipping what was in front of them.
No, they worshipped what was there. Whereas you are choosing to believe and worship the great what if.
And your point is?
Well, my point is that if there was going to be a fight between something that was there and something which wasn't there, then I know which side I'd bet on.
We'll discuss it later. Before they can keep going though, the entire bar basically tells them to fuck off. They don't serve their kind around here. Deacon isn't taking any shit tonight and almost starts a fight before being let out. They head back and Mark is officially done with this shit. They are out of here. Deacon is pretty convinced that something legitimate is happening here and goes off in the night to the church by himself, along the way seeing brief visions of Krellick.
Ah!
Hey, Lord's name in vain, young man. He goes through the church, once more hearing the crying. Listening to where it's coming from, he finds a hidden door behind a bookcase with the same pagan symbol carved onto it as the one from the minister's journal. There's a secret tunnel leading under the church, and on the staircase is a tiny skeleton. Fuck, this is grim. Deacon thinks so too and heads back, calling an old connection of his to help the investigation, Father Calvino. Mark is not happy with this since he considered the investigation over, but Calvino is happy to help out. As Deacon is showing them the evidence, one thing in particular stirs discussion. Krellick's voice mentions someone named Frizzetti, who the Vatican workers seem familiar with. Frizzetti worked with Deacon in Brazil. Deacon was present there and his story was a lie. The people running the scam knew the Vatican was onto them and had everyone but Deacon killed, who only survived because he was so drunk that night. It really does sting to find out that a part of these guys' newfound friendship is based on Deacon embellishing a story to make himself look better. Gray isn't even upset that Deacon got the other Vatican investigators killed, he's just upset that he lied. And now Gray has had enough of this bullshit and calls up the Vatican, resigning in the best manner he can.
I don't give a monkeys about the bones. You can give that to the fucking poor or something. You know what? Dan Brown was right about you lot. Now you can stick your Hail Marys up your fucking arse. He's gone.
Calvino explains that the church was likely built on the ground of a pagan temple, which is probably what's causing the spiritual disruptions. One last trip to the church to begin the ceremony to banish the demon. Calvino performs the ritual as Deacon and Mark have a heated argument, and as it's finished, everything goes to hell. Lights break, the ground shakes, objects fly everywhere, and Calvino can be seen bleeding from his eyes. When everything finally comes to a standstill, only Deacon and Gray are left. Mark is on the ground, unresponsive with blood coming out of his ears again, and Calvino is nowhere to be seen. Deacon heads down the staircase to look for him, and Gray finds himself locked in the church with no way out and Mark now gone. In a panicked desperation, he follows Deacon into the depths where they find a massive labyrinthine cave system. It's heartbreaking to see Gray like this when he really hasn't done anything wrong. The movie does a great job to make you feel for him. In the cave, they discover cages, messages on the wall from the old church minister, and a sacrificial altar surrounded by the skeletons of children and babies. So everything about the babies and the orphanage finally connects together. They were all being sacrificed to a pagan god. This is nothing like Huntsville camping trip which we just read, where the repetition of broken dolls served no purpose in the narrative. This actually ties back into the story. Along the way, they see Mark, or something that looks like Mark, and follow him even deeper into the increasingly claustrophobic tunnels. Upon hearing Calvino in one of them, they head inside a small, cramped cave that suddenly closes on both ends, leaving them trapped.
Okay, stop, Gray. Stop. It's getting too tight in here. We'll have to go back.
I'll turn around.
Quick as you like.
He's waiting here. Deacon, he's blocked this way.
What?
He's blocked at his end. He's moving. Deacon, he's moving. Dig out!
As they try to dig out, the reality of the situation sets in as they realize this is no cave, but simply the mouth of a massive pagan god who dissolves them in digestive juices. All Gray and Deacon can do is scream, cry, and pray as death takes them.
Oh, no! You said it wasn't real!
Well, that got intense. In the last half hour, this movie really kicks into overdrive, and hits you with a shocking twist right at the end, but one that not only makes sense, but explains earlier events in the movie. There's clues for this everywhere, even down to the pagan symbol to describe the beast resembling its tooth-lined mouth. A while back in my TribeTwelve review, I talked about how it was an example of a good twist that gave you the information for what was going on without point-blank telling you, and this movie does the same thing perfectly. The old minister discovered this creature living underneath his church, a pagan deity that was likely given sacrifices, and it demanded more. He bought the orphanage and sacrificed untold amounts of children and babies to it in order to appease it. The incident that starts this investigation is a baptism where a baby cries out. This creature was likely conditioned to expect food at this sound. It got excited and its sounds and movements shook the entire church, causing the supposed miracle. Remember, Krellick only opened the church a few months ago. There probably hasn't been a baby in here since the 1800s. Krellick clearly knew something, otherwise he wouldn't have given them the journal. And he mentioned the minister by name, saying he wasn't like him. But something had power in his church. Power over him. He was just convinced it was God. If it wasn't God, if it wasn't a miracle, if even the Vatican knew it wasn't God, then it was something greater than God, and he'd take his chances with it, mortal sin or otherwise. Because that's what it all comes back to, this conversation in the bar. If I had to pick whoever was going to win in a fight between something that's there and something that's not there, I picked the thing that's there. Krellick knew that much too. I'm not religious, but I like my share of demon movies because demons make an imposing obstacle in a movie considering their otherworldly nature. The whole way through, I thought this was going to be a demon movie, and that meant something in the back of my head. In demon movies, the demon can usually be stopped by some kind of exorcism or religious ceremony. There's lots of ways to banish or defeat a demon.
Oh no! From whence you came, you shall remain until you are complete again!
So when this movie ended, it not only gave me a sense of pity, hopelessness, and shock for these characters I've grown to know and like over these past 90 minutes, but it masterfully subverted my expectations in all the right ways. That's something horror movies are really great for. This movie has you going thinking everything is some kind of demon or evil spirit, maybe even a ghost, and it's something else entirely that makes just as much sense, if not more so. Something with power to glitch out electronics, conjure images and sounds of the dead, and influence those around it in a multitude of ways, while also being unthinkably massive with an appetite to mash. Something greater and more horrifying than the pagans or Christians could ever imagine, because it's as real as the moon, the sea, the stars, and the sun, and you can't pray those away. This was a great movie, one I'm happy I got to watch, review, and wholeheartedly recommend. The characters are all great, the atmosphere is very well done, and the ending is thoroughly chilling with a great twist. It does a great job with the Lovecraftian-style unimaginable monster by making it cosmically horrifying yet also, quite literally, grounded. It feels real, even if Gray very much so wishes it wasn't. That's one of the best things about the movie in general. It feels very real. There was never a time where I was taken out of it thinking, this character wouldn't do that, or that was a bad line and a bad take. All around, just a great experience. And if you didn't watch it before my story summary, then you've done yourself a disservice by spoiling it for yourself. Even then, my summary doesn't do it justice, and you should watch it anyway. Here, I'll end the video. Now you have to do it. Yeah, these links should scare you off. Ooh, Twitter and Patreon. Ooh, look out. Here come the patron names. Ooh. I gotta keep this lighthearted. That ending kind of fucked me up. Alright everyone, until next time.